I think Silksong's endings are pretty straightforward. There's Weaver Queen, which is the standard ending achieved when Grandmother Silk is defeated. There's Snared Silk, the ending which you get by defeating Grandmother Silk, but playing the needle in instead of binding with her. This is also the bridge between Act 2 and Act 3. Twisted Child is next, where you have to defeat Grandmother Silk while infected by the Twisted Bud. I personally like the lore implications for this one. And the final ending, Sister of the Void, is achieved once Lost Lace is defeated, with cameos from the Knight and all our other siblings. Honorable mention to Passing of the Age, which really isn't an ending per se, but Mr. Mushroom is always welcome here. Also, the To Be Continued lives on, so another Team Cherry game is all but confirmed. But there used to be another ending titled Strung to Serve. As time has moved on, talented individuals from the wiki have been able to piece together the story behind this ending because, oh boy, this wasn't a simple bad ending. Its existence and its removal indicate a whole different story. That's why today I wanted to analyze the Silksong of an alternate timeline, a version of the game which, dare I say, is possibly a bit better than what we have now. Let's dive right in. Strung to Serve was the base ending, which you would unlock for simply beating the game. Hornet stabs Grandmother Silk, and just like in Snared Silk, Grandmother overpowers her and pulls her into that tight embrace. This time, Lace never arrives. The cinematic then begins, shifting to a silhouette, something that looks like Hornet and Grandmother Silk at the same time, which indicates that Silk may have been able to bind with Hornet and consume her powers. Then the consequences follow immediately. Silk begins to spread from the cradle. Threads reach outward, settling into a group of pilgrims as the haunting continues unchecked. In short, nothing was stopped and Grandmother Silk wins. So, how were you meant to avoid this? Currently, bells act as requirements for the last judge, but they used to carry more weight than that. Ringing the bells across Farloom was tied directly to the ending. They even had some pretty cool lore. A conversation with the caretaker explains that the bells were created by the weavers to weaken Grandmother Silk by feeding the resonance of the land of Farloom up into the cradle. Hornet was meant to ring 8 bells in total. Some are familiar because they're the ones you already activate, but others are completely different, including one in the Red Coral Gorge, one in Aspid, and another in Bilewater. Bilewater's bell is particularly interesting because Grohl, yes, Grohl, was meant to reward you with it upon his defeat. So once all the bells were active, the game needed somewhere to acknowledge that. On the left side of the cradle, there was a small area referred to as the Bell Hub. Inside was a screen showing the Bellshrines, so you could check which ones you had activated before facing Grandmother Silk. At the top of that screen sits a crest matching the other objects placed around the room. These are tuning forks, large structures Hornet could activate. They were tied directly to the Bellshrines. When a bell was rung, its corresponding fork would respond, hence the feeding of the resonance. When every fork was active, the central one, the bell fork, changed state. It moved through multiple stages until reaching a final glowing state. That final state appears to be what affected the fight. With the system complete, the battle against Grandmother Silk included a bell attack that stunned her and forced her to her knees. And that's how you avoided the bad ending and achieved the good ending. With Strung to Serve as the bad ending and Weaver Queen acting as the good ending, Act 3 becomes harder to place in that earlier version of Silksong. Dialogue from the caretaker in the cradle never references the Soul Snare, the requirement for Act 3. At the same time, Grohl the Great was meant to reward a Bell Shrine after defeat, which raises the question about whether Seeker's Soul existed yet. There are also signs that the Abyss was connected to the Bell Hub due to this sprite that connects all the bells with Silk. One of them seems to be pointing in the direction of the Abyss. Team Cherry have mentioned that the Red Memory and the Old Hearts memories were among the last major additions to the game. Taken together, this suggests that while Act 3 was planned, its progression and possibly its role changed significantly. Alright, it's time to get our hands dirty. Is this version of Silksong better? Well, one thing's for certain, it definitely makes the game feel very unified. You have one purpose in Farloom, and that's to ring all the bells. Because Silksong, as it exists now, isn't really about a single objective. It's about unraveling a mystery. The bells, they have their role, they are important, yes, but they're only one thread in a much larger tapestry involving Lace, the Soul Snare, the Red Memory, and Hornet's identity itself. But what really pushes me towards favoring the current Silksong is Act 3. I think it's a wonderful addition that elevates the story, and a big part of that comes down to Lost Lace. Throughout the Hollow Knight games, you're always going up. The final boss, the final threat, it's always a really strong higher being. Silksong has more of a personal tale, with Lace truly being lost, struggling to find the answer to who she really is. But what do you think? Do you prefer the bell system? My name is Ari, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more Silksong content. I'll see you all next time.